start just kind of with the basics and do like a temperature check of our industry right now. What is getting greenlit, whether it's the genre or what is attractive to either buyers or the market today? I'd love to hear from everybody kind of what you've been seeing.
It's been very interesting with the effect of the strikes and, of course, coming out of COVID. I think what was inevitable with this mass production of content to fill all the streaming platforms, the strikes definitely advanced the decline of that. That was going to happen at some point, but the strikes definitely cut it short. But during that time, since I guess summer of last year through now, we've seen a lot of stuff in early stage development. So a lot of things where we're working with the Writers Guild in the U.S. to engage writers, develop projects. So we've seen a mix of film and television, and now we're seeing a lot more things go into production. And it's all over the map. I'm working on $30 million films. I'm working on mid-range budget films. A lot of television production of all different sizes and shapes. So it's a pretty good mix. It's just not as much.
Yeah, and it doesn't seem to really follow a rhyme or reason at the moment, other than the fact that you have to keep in mind that everything is a pendulum swing. So a couple of years ago, everything was television, episodic had to be it, and now it's kind of coming back to us, I think, towards film. A few more. It's still not fantastic, but it's headed that way. For me, the vast majority of the people that I work with are making low-budget films. So they're in that $2 to $3 million range, but they're coming up a little bit to like the 5. Every once in a while we get a 10, but that still feels a little bit like a no man's land because you have to figure out where can it go. So there's still a big area that is not amazing to produce as a budget, but that $5 million to $1 million still works. It's probably still streamer, but it still works.
Yeah, I think the film business today exists kind of in two sectors. There's the studios and platforms that are on kind of a completely different economic calculation and scale and business, because most of them are public companies. They make a ton of content, and it's really dependent on market share and you know, impressing their investors and making sure that they can have a return while hopefully making great entertainment as well. I live fully in the independent space, which operates very differently, and to your point, there's not too much of a middle ground now where films are getting made in the $15 to $45 million range. Those are few and far between. There used to be way more. Now it's either studio level and it's 100 plus with just as much spent on marketing and P&A, or it's indie and it's 5 or under. And that's kind of the space I live in. I love to be making bigger movies, but it is riskier and it is tougher to get above that 5 million range, I would say, these days. Maybe you can get 7 or 8. But those films, in my line of work, which is pre-sales and raising money based on packages, very much cast dependent. If you can get some great actors who are recognizable and audiences will see them on the poster or know their past work and like them, they'll be more likely to buy those. And so distributors will therefore pay me as a sales agent, distribution, minimum guarantees ahead of time, and you can finance films that way. Cast is huge, director, they've done a lot of great work and are reliable, that helps too. Genre and budget range, making sure there's some kind of return for investors. So that's kind of the world I can speak to more so on the indie side, because we operate, I think, a little bit more entrepreneurially, where we live film to film, and every film is a new LLC and a new business you start, and a new group of people you're assembling, like an entrepreneurial startup, compared to kind of the legacy or larger public companies, which have their own calculus completely.
I think just to build off of that, it's a secure package, right? Whether it's $2 million or $50 million, it's knowing what value your cast or your director or your potential sales are, and being able to put together a finance plan that looks attractive to investors, that seems like you know what you're doing, that you have a plan. Things may shift, they always do, but if you can really pitch that in a confident way and you have a plan of how to go out and get it, I think there's a lot less dumb money, and investors are getting increasingly smart. So you have to be able to explain to them very clearly how you're going to have a return on their investment, and they're not just going to be swindled by a story, as unfortunate as that may be to the creatives in the room. But a plan of attack is very important in the beginning.
I want to bring back more dumb money. More money is not as fun.
Please.
This is all really good information, and I think that the thing that I'm really touching on universally with all of this is, as filmmakers, knowing what the market can sustain. It's looking at sales agents and distributors like Jack and finding out what would the market pay for this, and making sure that your budget is in line with that, and then you're talking to investors, in a way that you can instill confidence in them. And I know one of the things that really makes a film marketable, and we hear it all the time, is the package. And I'm seeing more and more that companies want you as the filmmaker to put together the package, which is the director, which is the talent, and a good finance plan. And I'm not a mind reader, but I'm reading minds right now, and everyone's going, yeah, but how do you attach talent that means something? So let's talk about that. What advice can we give filmmakers of attaching talent to your projects when it is perhaps your first project or you're just getting started?
I was just talking to an actress who is on a hit TV show. She's done a lot of independent work, and she was saying she doesn't have an agent. And I was like, how are people finding you? And ultimately, the beauty of film and entertainment is that as big as it is, it's also really small. And people will talk to each other. So she was like, people know people who work with me, or they'll find my manager, or they will reach out to me. Not every actor has the same process of how they're going to look at projects. I have a really strange kind of concept of it, is that I have a stupid brain that holds a lot of dumb information, but it actually proves useful sometimes. And then I pay attention to when people, I look at interviews, I watch people talk about what they're interested in. Not necessarily the movie they're doing, but I also ride horses, I cook, I do whatever. And when I have a project that has something to do with horses, I go, that's my in. Something that they haven't done and I know they love. And so a lot of it is finding out not just how do I get who I want, but how do I find who wants me? And leaning towards those actors who I know are predisposed to want to hear about it because I know that they love French cooking. I have just the thing for you. They'll read it when it touches something like that.
I think too, a close, warm relationship is always the easiest and most helpful way to get material to anybody. So if you don't know anybody and you're looking to maybe work with a producer or a sales agent or a financier or a director or what have you, that may have those relationships or may have made an indie movie years ago with an actor you like, or may have, be represented at a talent agency or management company that may rep some actors you want to go to. Getting in contact with them is a great way, and to give a shout out to Stage 32, this is a platform you can go and connect with all sorts of people who are in every facet of the film business, and that can be a great way to connect, and also, the resources like IMDb and other social media sites. We live in a world now where direct contact with most people is easier than ever. If you take a couple steps, you can usually find contact info for anybody, and being able to pitch those people and just put yourself out there and try to interest them in taking a look at whatever you're working on is, I think, more accessible than ever, but it's also harder to get through the noise because there's so much of it. So you have to have something really interesting and something that makes sense. You're not trying to make your first feature for $50 million and it's like people are not going to take you seriously. Have a little bit of a plan behind it and talk to people to partner up with and educate you on areas that you don't know.
Jackie, I'm curious, just from the packaging side and the deals done with talent. I mean, talent can be affordable and can be attached to a low budget project. Can you talk a little bit about things that filmmakers should be aware of on the deal side, or some of the things that you're seeing with your clients as to how they're doing that attachment?
Yeah, I mean, there's all sorts of sweeteners that aren't money out of pocket, out of the budget. So that's back-end points, that's EP credits. There's all sorts of things that you can offer. But at the end of the day, a certain talent may really have a dream to produce and may have a production company that they want to start. And maybe that turns into a true production company partner where they're much more invested in it and they have a lot more at stake, where you don't, you can get away with payment scale, which you would never otherwise be able to do. Maybe just to close a deal, it is an extra point on the back end, or it's an EP credit. But those types of things I have found in deals that I've done are very just dependent on who the talent is. Some people literally don't care, and some people love to build up that credit repertoire, and that's just very dependent on the person. So at that point, it's relationship dependent, right? Whether it's a manager or an agent, or the talent themselves. Like, you have to know who you're talking to and who you're negotiating against, because it's a people business, and everyone has a different perspective on those things.
Thank you. Does anyone else have anything that you want to add to that part of it? Let's talk about those deals, because I know specifically Darrien and Michael, you are working with filmmakers through that process, especially with the unions. There's been some delays recently. Can you talk a little bit about some of the pitfalls or the trouble that filmmakers might run into in those deals these days, and what they need to be aware of, and the resources that you both offer to kind of help them along?
Sure. So anytime you're working with a union, you have to realize that there are just rules. I mean, there are rules to it. And as many times as people kind of call me and have some basic complaints, I always say that those rules weren't there at the beginning. So there's a reason why they're there now. And so you have to realize that they don't come out of the ether, that something has triggered the need for this. So you just have to figure out how you're going to do what you want to do and still follow the rules. The fact is, as producers, you're at some risk of doing things incorrectly, and having to deal with SAG-AFTRA specifically for me. But your actor has a greater risk when you try to skirt the rules. So if you're building a relationship in this business, the last thing you want to do is do something that's going to be detrimental to your talent. And so there are ways, you're not going to get everything you want every single time, but there are ways to usually get what you need, and everybody gets, the coverage that they need, the safety that they need. A lot of it is based on just making sure that the membership is safe. So when you understand the underlying reason for it, it becomes easier to figure out how to use it.
And that's a very good point. I think in everything we do, we're always looking at productions, especially internationally, in terms of, do they need to be guild covered? What is the talent? What is the sort of genesis relationship to the U.S. that even requires guild coverage? But at the end of the day, it really does come into the safety and health. What are the working conditions for the performers? What is this? Are the producers known to just run grueling days where they're going to take a 7-week shoot, try to cram it into 4 weeks, and work everyone 16 hours? Where they're just exhausted, and the camera guy and the boom operator dropping the mic on people's heads. People try to get this stuff done. There's a budget, and there's days, and there's a cost for each day you run. But I think in the first instance, that's always priority in terms of what is the sort of landscape and conditions in which the production is going to take place. Where is it going to take place? What are the sort of standards of that producer? Their ethical sort of, I guess, constitution in terms of how they operate, what are they known for? And then getting more to the specifics of your particular question, just one of the things that I think we could talk more about this is we are seeing, there's been in the last few years of our dealings with productions, it's seemingly been either last minute dealings with issues that pop up like the week you're going into production. I think the last thing any producer wants to do is have to spend 2 days of the week before they're actually starting dealing with guild union issues. And so we've recently had a lot of success, and I hope, Darrien, you have too, in working earlier with the unions to really start the process well in advance of when you ever would. It presents some challenges because you may not have the financing locked in, you may not even have your cast locked in, but you know you're going to make a movie, you know the approximate budget range, you know where you're going to try to shoot it. And so using some of those sort of tidbits of information, we are going out a lot earlier and building a relationship, particularly with SAG-AFTRA, to get that process done much earlier in time so that you're not stuck at the last week trying to scramble?
What I love about everybody up here is that low-key we're all fixers. And so my job is to talk to people and say, once you started the process with SAG-AFTRA, you'll get a person, you'll get your very own person, you don't keep them, but it's a business rep. But the key is they may have 50 productions on their desk. So if you call with a question, you may be number 34 on their phone sheet, and that can take a long time. So I say, you give your rep a week, because they are your primary person. It's a lot like the DMV. It depends on who you get at the window on how your experience goes. So be nice, smile, and hope that they're having a good day. But if you have a question and and you need it, and as independent filmmakers, a week is forever when you have a question and you can't move forward. So you give your rep a week, and then if you don't have an answer, you call me. And my business is usually in the building, but we've actually gone work from home. But if you have a question and it needs to be answered, you can actually just call SAGIndie.org. Just go to the website, get our phone number, and call us. We are a free service, so we will either answer the question. If we can't answer the question, we will call your rep and say, can you just tell me the answer, and you can get this off your list. And if they can't answer it, I can go to their boss. So my equivalent is like the national director. So we can get it done. We're happy to do it. Don't wait until 4 weeks down the line, I never was told this. You have to get your information quickly so you can keep moving. And if it hasn't been answered, don't wait until the last minute and raise a flag. Raise a flag early. A week, 10 days most, raise a flag, call my office. Or call Michael, I'm sure he'll appreciate
I'm
that.
not free, but I have this person's cell phone, so, and she knows when I call there's a problem, so she answers. But yes, we have two alternatives.
So a lot of things to be aware of when you're attaching talent and ways to do it. I want to shift a little bit over to, I think, another key component of getting your film greenlit, which is the finance plan. And having a finance plan in place that makes sense, that supports your cash flow, and that investors can trust. I know, Jack, we were talking a little bit about this earlier. What are some of the finance plans right now that are really working in the market?
The films I'm working on typically have three main components to it, which is some kind of pre-sales or distribution, debt deals where you're brokering licensing and territorial rights to somebody either ahead of time as a pre-sale or later on when the film's finished, going out and selling those. And as far as the finance plan ahead of time, the second component would be equity, just cash that somebody's investing and hoping for a return, usually 20% in first position once the film starts to recoup some money is a typical arrangement. And then the third piece being soft money, which is typically tax credits, rebates, filming in states or countries that have incentives, and potentially advantageous labor rates and things like that. A lot of films are pretty much a third across the board. Others that may be genres or casts that pre-sell better could be 100% or close to it in pre-sales, and the rest a little bit of equity and soft money. It's way harder these days than it used to be to pre-sell a full budget and greenlight something just off of pre-sales, unless you have a massive A-list talent name involved. Those are tough to get and expensive. So you have to spend in order to get to that position in the first place. You can't really finance a movie fully with just soft money or tax credits. You need 100%, which doesn't really exist. 50 is kind of the max you can get to. If you can get something fully financed with an equity partner or high net worth individual or somebody who's passionate about film, or that's usually the best case scenario. You can just go make the movie, and then anything that you get in the back end when it's released or through the sales is upside, and you're back in the profits already, and you have this beautiful film made. That's the kind of typical structure I see a lot in my area, like the below $5 million budget range is around a third tax credits, a third equity, a third sales is a common breakdown, but it could be any variation within there of those three.
I actually, one question. Do you see a lot of slate still in terms of that plan of like you'll raise 15 million across 5 films type of thing?
I think a lot of producers want to do that, but finding a partner to do that is very hard. Having the ability to hedge your bets across a bunch of movies is always best because it's a tough business and most movies lose money. A few make the money back for the losers. So if you have 5 and you get 1 hit and 1 kind of breaks even and 3 lose money, the one that makes the real return and the 2 or 3 or 4x can pay off the others, and you continue going that way. And it's just more fun because you make a diverse slate of films with different types of people, different genres and stories. So that's definitely pursued and wanted and desirable, but finding someone who can cash flow that and has the money to and the passion and interest in doing that is the challenge.
You know, so many people have kind of floated the idea that resale is dead. So it's great to hear that you're saying that this is still a part of it. If you're dealing in the low budget, let's say 5 million and under, are there any parameters to it? Are there any genres that are either go or like don't bother?
Definitely. There's a bit of a hierarchy genre-wise. The easiest sells tend to be action, thriller, horror, right under that. And then comedy. The tougher ones are drama. Documentaries are tough to sell now because there's so many of them for free on streaming and YouTube and online. The reason action and thriller and horror and these genre types of films work well with pre-sales is because they're easily translatable. If you dub an action scene or something, you still don't lose the action. It looks great on screen. A lot of the foreign business still runs basically off of theatrical first, so they can get into theaters, and having something big with big scares or big, emotional moments, big action scenes, or big fantasy epics with great, CGI and VFX, that can translate across different cultures, different languages, and it's easier to sell. If you have a comedy or a drama or something that's a little bit slower paced, it's very dependent on what's the context within that culture, like are the jokes landing, and jokes are very territorial in some cases. And there's just so much more local content being made these days because if you can make content for cheaper with cheaper digital equipment and editing techniques, and now AI is coming in and adding the ability to do a lot of CGI and VFX cheaper. So local distributors and local viewers want to watch local stories, and so it's harder to sell as an American Hollywood company out to the rest of the world unless you're really hitting those genres that do translate and hopefully have a good budget behind it to look great and exciting on screen.
And have any of you seen any, or maybe you could share an example of a creative, for the filmmakers that can't do pre-sales, and they're relying on private equity, being able to attract the equity investors to it, some creative ways that you've seen with filmmakers?
Well, yeah, as Jack was speaking, one of our clients is 5 and 2, the producers of The Chosen, which is this just massive series, and it started as a crowdsourced based production, which is just remarkable. And you hear a lot. I think there was a lot of talk of it pre-COVID-ish, where there was crowdsourcing, angel investors, and GoFundMe, and all those things. Those still exist to some part. It was really interesting to see it in the context of a series that has now just blossomed into something so huge. So it's still crowdsourced, but now obviously Amazon's involved in other parties, so there's money from other places. But that to me is still a creative way, whether it starts with a small pool of friends and then you go out from there. But if you're really just starting out, I think that's an obvious way to get money raised.
And in that instance, it becomes that much more important to understand if you're going to use like a deck to explain your vision, especially depending on what kind of genre you're talking about. Because ultimately what you're doing is you're selling a vision, and honestly you're selling the idea of being a part of something that's magical, even if it's not a magical film. So a lot of it is telling somebody it's going to look great is a hard way to get people to buy in. But if you have a good deck that kind of explains, like, this is the world, this is the look, this is the kind of feel of it, it becomes a little bit easier for people who are maybe not in the business to imagine what they're talking about. And I find that it becomes easier for them to get their mind around it, so it makes it a little easier to sell.
Mike, are you referencing Angel Studios with The Chosen, or?
They're called 5 and 2 now. The Angel was, I think, part of that group a having the original sort of investing parties.
Right, okay.
But 5 and 2, they're chosen. Joseph. I mean, it's the whole world is this one. There's a couple of articles about it. We also it's become a big business for us because we're also working with the Capra Project, which are the producers of the Wonder Project. They keep changing their names, but they're producing House of David, which is another biblical type epic series. And then back to the content we're seeing. A lot of limited series. Limited series are just massive right now.
Are they still? Do you think that new limited series are still in the ability to kind of get through it? We're seeing it start to wane for us.
Yeah, well, I think the subject matter has been exhausted in terms of like the music artists, the sports figures, are the ones that you really want to go and see. And there's been some success in the actual feature film space with Bohemian Rhapsody, and you compare that to the Whitney biopic. I think there's fewer of those opportunities, which might be why they're waning. But I still think there's a number of other subjects for limited series, and like with House of David, that's how that started, and with Chosen, it started like, let's tell a story about the Bible and see what happens, and now they're in season 5, 6, 7, and they've got an order for 7.
Jackie, because I know that you also do a lot of packaging over at Ramo, and what are you seeing on that finance side from filmmakers that are actually leaning into the creativity of finding that money?
I mean, I think it comes from all different places. If you're lucky enough to find, sort of that one equity angel investor, so to speak, what I think is very helpful is to just sort of show them what they have to gain from it, right? Like make sure that you have a clean waterfall. You're not planning on taking hundreds of thousands of dollars in producer deferrals, because it's not as nice as that might sound. That's not going to look attractive to them, right? So what I've seen is, especially with some of the more unsophisticated equity investors, which I think could potentially be somebody that's investing, 100% of their equity in this movie because they really believe in it and they're all in on it. But show them, what the sales need to be for them to make X, Y, Z amount, and show them these comps that everyone's talking about and what people have made on that, and put it in a very simple, in your deck, right? Put the dollar amounts and what they have to stand to gain right in front of their faces, so that they can see the upside on it rather than just seeing the money that they're paying you.
Very, very helpful. And I just want to add to it too. I always say, if I can't sit there and look an investor in the eye, which I can't, and say, you're definitely going to get your money back, always thinking into being able to appeal to another why, whether it's they're passionate about the story, it's about adoption and they were adopted, or it's a cause that they really care about, or they have a gain on the business side. They just sold a business and they really need the offset. So it's leaning into the things that by producing this film, I can actually show you that regardless of how much money it makes, you are going to get X. Your town's going to be showcased and it's going to be beautiful in this final product. So,
and I think being able to do the research on that too. Like if you have a project that is mission driven or is about something, you may not have access to that person directly, but everyone has Google. Go find people that you think might be interested in it or might align with it and might be interested in partnering with you, because you can research that and you can figure out a way to get to those people directly.
Absolutely.
I think too, when you're pitching projects and you're looking for an investor to get involved, it is important to show the finance plan, and at least, and you may not be an expert who's done 1,000 of these, but having an idea of what that can look like and what a potential return could be. But I would never guarantee a return, because that is a huge red flag, because it's never guarantees. It's like a quick way to just dismiss that project. When I receive a pitch deck for a project for the first time, it might be a warm submission, might be a cold submission that I've never met the person or whatever. If I scroll through and it's not clearly, if they label it as just a creative deck, it's one thing, but if it's a full pitch deck, what I'll often do just to kind of vet it quickly is scroll to the bottom and see if there are financials involved. And if there is some kind of business plan or a budget run or some kind of ROI hope, even if it is not a formal plan, but something that they've thought about this, it'll be way more attractive to me, because one, I can vet the numbers. If the numbers sort of make sense, there's something more to talk about. If they don't make sense at all, then as good as the creative may be, they don't understand like how the actual mechanics of the business work at all, and I'll probably not engage in that.
The show business thing that the part that we forget a lot. I think it's probably a good time to take some questions from the audience. Oh, we have someone right here. So if you have a question, just raise your hand and go ahead.
Just wondering about how best to pitch yourself if you're like a multi-hat wearer, because I've heard some people say just pitch yourself as a writer, if you're also a writer, director, producer, editor, like where do you kind of draw the line? And does it depend on the project or your previous experience?
I'll repeat. Can we hear that in the back? The question was essentially if you're a multi-hyphenate, how do you how do you best pitch yourself in the situation to gain the respect of investors in the package?
I think it's great to be or try to be all the things that you want to be and say that you are those things, but what have you actually done? If you can show me you've edited 5 movies and directed 3 and written, this is your first one you're writing, I would like to know that, because then I'm like, okay, she has experience editing and directing, and this is her first script, but she's been around movies, she's worked on 10 plus movies, and so she kind of understands screenplays, and so it'll inform me to read this as somebody who's been around the business. If it was just your first screenplay, you hadn't done anything, then I would look with a much more critical eye, because the experience isn't there. Aspirations and what you see yourself as a multi-hyphenate are great, but what you've actually accomplished and can point to would be more important to me, because I know who I'm dealing with that has that experience. And you don't have to have that experience, but at least going in with eyes open, knowing what the risk is that this is a first timer, and you may just have to work closer with them to get something properly.
It also depends on what you're pitching yourself as and what it is we're talking about. If you're talking about I'm going to make my first feature, but I've edited 5 films and I have written this one, but I have had several screenplays that I submitted, and if you have any accolades of previous ones I submitted, any of the screenplay organizations, then start with your strongest. And then you can go back and include some others, but start with your strongest film. I have edited 5 films. I have now written up my 3rd script, my other 2 did this. I'm now ready to make it, and I have experience already in these things. Then I can kind of understand all of that. Otherwise, you end up kind of sounding like you're throwing a lot of spaghetti at a wall. I can do this, I can do that, I can do anything, I can dance. And you're like, I just need to be able to concentrate on something and then be value add on other things.
Okay, we're going to pass the mic so everybody can hear. So we've got a question right here and then back in the blue.
Hi, I don't know if I'm overthinking this, but I'm wondering if there's been a reluctance to invest in certain types of movies because of the current political climate in the United States. Like, people don't want to become targets because they're investing in certain issues.
Well, it depends on what platform. I think that Apple's notorious for shying away from a lot of content early in the stage. They just don't want any, in China, going back decades, they just don't want to interrupt that ecosystem. So I think that's a big part of it. I think, that obviously the news in the last week of tariffs, which I'm sure everyone's talking as they're walking around, is a big thing to discuss. From my perspective, it's definitely just sort of stalled things. People are unsure of what's going to happen and how the dust is going to settle. We're starting to see some breakthroughs with that, and I think things will move forward. But yeah, if you want to make a movie critical of Donald Trump, which actually was pretty amazing, what was it called? The Apprentice. It was a great film. And of course, nobody bought it, which was a problem. So yes, subject matter definitely can be concerning, and that's, as a U.S. citizen, that's very frustrating. I think the positive to take away, regardless of your political opinions, is there's a lot of attention now drawn to bringing production back to the U.S. It's obviously a more expensive concept to do it. Wages are higher, but if there is a way where we can figure out tax incentives to bring production back, or at least keep production that wants to be there but can't because it's too expensive, give it an opportunity to gestate in the United States.
Amazon's been avoiding political dogs for a while as well. A lot of companies, like to your point, especially Apple having huge Chinese relationships, they don't want to mess with that. So the larger the company, it's like Amazon has so many different businesses and so is so international. Sometimes they don't want to rock the boat, so they will be more hesitant, but then there'll be other companies like, you know, a Briarcliff that released The Apprentice and wants to take that risk and knows that it's being talked about, and we'll take a ticket on that and think that the audience will come to see this because it's a hot button topic, but with a great production team around it. And ultimately it didn't work. I went to the theater and saw it, and there was maybe 3 people in the theater, so it's the risk that some are willing to take and others aren't.
It also comes down to your why. Why are you making it? You know, the financial is always important, but sometimes the people backing it, it's getting that message across, which is what you could lean into. But back in the blue.
So I'm on the other side now. I've made an independent documentary, directed, produced it because of the subject matter, which is about the Ukrainian war. I didn't even have time to think about how I'm going to finance it, so I financed it myself, and then the hope was to get the money back. And now I have the film finished. It's running at film festivals, and I'm working with a distributor in London, but so far I haven't made any money back, and I'm wondering if this is still going to happen, and I would like to hear what your distribution strategy would be.
Is your British distributor distributing it themselves? Are they trying to sell it to other territories, or what are they doing?
They are doing both.
Okay. Are they here at the market, meeting with other countries and trying to sell those rights? Okay. I mean, you're doing the right thing. Yeah, that's what I do. Is I sell movies and sometimes documentaries and meet with different countries and distributors in those countries at festivals like Cannes. So that's the right move. I mean, partnering with a sales agent or distributor in London or wherever that you believe in, that you think is passionate about it, we'll take that gamble. And a lot of people, again, will shy away and not want to touch it, and some will want to dive in because they believe in it or they think it'll draw an audience. It's obviously a popular issue that almost everybody's talking about. So I think it sounds like a doc that will get a lot of views and get a lot of attention, and you just may have to be patient with it and then not expect a huge deal overnight, and make sure that you're working closely with your distributor to set up more meetings. And you should reach out too, like, as the filmmaker, don't rely just on them. Contact people, do social media marketing campaigns, try to get the word out there, go spread the word as much as you can, and I think that's all you can do. You kind of have to let the chips fall where they may a little bit, but you're making the right moves.
Congratulations on getting your documentary done and getting an agent though. All right, we have a question back in the green, and then right here in the front row after.
Hi there, just to give you a little background, I work in the accounts and film high-end TV in the UK and Ireland. That's a lot of co-productions for streamers. So like last year I was in the UK doing Paramount 10 million, Amazon 20 million, Sophie Turner. Ireland doing 3 to 6 million. I haven't heard anything about pre-sales. I mean, how big of a chunk of that are you getting now? That's like 5 years I haven't heard anybody having kind of pre-sales on this side of the pond. I also do a side rep in a rep 665
And sort of, is that television or film?
Both television and film. So limited TV series, Hallmark in Ireland, finished German broadcast over there as well. All co-productions, multiple co-productions between Ireland, tax breaks, Irish broadcast, Panelists, Hulu, in Spain. So it seems to be either built on co-production, or then a streamer comes on or a streamer led. I haven't seen anything pre-sale, so I was kind of curious, have you had any of that in Europe?
I think it goes back to what Jack says, that the pre-sales are very genre dependent. So I mean, I just did a US Spanish co-production, $45 million action film that was, large part relying on a huge chunk of pre-sales, also a big part of that co-production incentive that they were able to gain. So I think it depends on what the project is and whether it's something that's attractive to pre-sell, but also if you are capitalizing on an attractive co-production incentive, the pre-sale, dependent on the rest of your finance plan, may not be as important because you may be able to really get it done between equity, debt, and the co-production incentive too.
And just to add on more of the co-production side, we're seeing a lot of our clients like Fremantle and even BBC now. They're partnering or bringing a lot of these producers for smaller platforms, and they have had like 1 hit, 2 hits in-house or developing relationships with them. So they're selling the distribution all to that specific entity, and then that entity is going and shopping out. So they're acting a lot as an agent.
There's a question in the front, and then we could take maybe one more. Is there anyone? Okay, we'll end with this question.
I guess to kind of add on to when you were talking about Briarcliff and The Apprentice, the one thing I kind of noticed about Briarcliff was, like, while Briarcliff is a smaller distributor, I realized they did actually put older cars on The Apprentice, which I thought was really good. So I guess the question I have is, for like a first-time indie filmmaker who has just shot his first feature film and, you know, created a festival, what would you say is like a better option, going for like a smaller distributor who's gonna, for example, throw all their cards at it and give it like try to put as many features as possible, or more so going for like a Neon or an A24 or a IFC or something that's like a very established indie distributor that's gonna most likely give it a small limited release, and they're not really gonna throw everything at it because they have big projects, of course. Just wondering what you guys consider to be a better option.
I think all of those companies you just named are great and actually more similar than they are different. I would consider them all kind of in that mid-tier size. They're not, you know, one of the big 6 or 7 studios, but they're not super, you know, small digital aggregator indie either. They all have theatrical capabilities, you know, especially Neon and A24 are hotter than ever now, winning Oscars and having huge blockbusters and doing big theatrical campaigns. Briarcliff is a newer company, but it's run by Tom Martinberg, who's been around for decades and is a veteran in the space. So that's valuable. You want someone who has relationships with the theaters and knows who to, you know, build those campaigns with and has a smart marketing plan. So I wouldn't say there's a right or a wrong either way. I would meet with as many as you can and have them all pitch their thoughts and their ideas on the film, and some will want to put more into upfront fees, and others will want to put more into marketing and P&A, and maybe not have anything paid up front to you, but betting on the back end. Others will want to do a bigger rev share so you can put the movie out, not have as many costs to recoup, and then start monetizing immediately. So I always just look at each project individually and see what offers are here and compare them side by side rather than trying to only target one type of distributor.
Makes sense.
I think it's important to know that any distributor who is talking to you about your film, you're talking to them as well. You're interviewing each other. So you have to kind of ask the right questions that are going to make you comfortable with them. You know, what are they planning to do? Are they planning to market? What's their idea about where your film may fit in amongst their films or amongst the market to them? Because how they answer that tells you a lot about how they see you and your project. But also, and I can't kind of stress this enough, but when somebody wants to distribute your film and you're strongly considering them, look at the other films that they have distributed and call those filmmakers and ask them how that relationship went. Because it can be fantastic. It could be like, they were great, we love them. Or it could be, hi, they took our film and they never spoke to us again, and we could never get reporting, we could never get any information. So ask people, how did it feel? They took your film. Did you like the process? Did they stay in contact? Those are all things that are going to either make your life better or miserable later on. So you're interviewing them too.
Yeah, that's great advice, because somebody could offer you 10 times more than the next person, if the next person is honest and reports well and puts real effort into it and is a reliable partner and someone who will answer your phone calls and not disappear and move on to the next, then that could be worth way more down the road.
So, do any of you have a crystal ball or an idea of maybe what the next trend that you predict might be in this Greenlit space? Just curious. We talked about the genres that are really working, but any indicators?
And we're seeing a ton of conversation at the company guild level in AI, which obviously is going to change things. The unions have this fear, and I think it is real that it's existential, that it can replace writing, it can replace acting. There's certainly technology that can do all this. It's getting better and better. So I think that looking to see who takes that first step to do a full AI type project and see the success of it. Maybe the next big thing, but I think we're at the precipice of that happening.
I think you're seeing that a little bit already with indies. I think studios taking the risk on a fully AI project is probably years away because you are replacing a lot of human work and there's issues around that, obviously. But I think here, if you walk through the Palais or Riviera, you're seeing a lot of sales agents who have made AI movies and they look good. I mean, you can't deny that. They may not look as good as a traditional, CGI edited animation or action sci-fi film, but are they going to sell well if the buyer knows that they were made for dirt cheap and the audience will recognize that? Will they still show up? I think everyone's still trying to figure that out right now, and I don't think it's going to succeed in a huge way right now. I think people are still testing the waters. I'm not selling any films that are really AI at all, not even a small bit. I'm kind of waiting to let other people take the front line of bullets first, and then I'll see if there's any survivors. But it's definitely happening already, especially on the indie side, and there's no way to really fully predict that. One other thing I think we'll be seeing more of is brand finance content. I think there's an opportunity for big companies and brands to use product placement or promote things that they're trying to sell or services that they're offering to their customers and clients, and putting that in an organic way into film and TV and releasing those where the film's fully financed for a brand, for example, and hopefully it doesn't feel like a commercial, but it's something that can still find an audience organically and work well for the brand too, and any sale after that is upside. And then self-distribution too, AVOD, YouTube, social media, TikTok, short form, real shorts, all that's happening in a major way too.
That brand point is very poignant. If you look at anything Amazon, the whole point is for them to sell Prime memberships, so that's right on point.
We do have crystal balls.
I think to the AI point too, it's not all or nothing, right? It's not a fully AI film, but I'm seeing companies sort of figure out how to make strategic partnerships within the structuring of a film to cut down on costs. So I see a company that's working with completion guarantors who ensure the picture is going to be delivered, right? And they can sort of provide insurance, so to speak, that if there's reshoots needed or something like that, they can get those through AI. So it's not totally replacing the current infrastructure, but there are ways to cut costs and cut corners that aren't totally giving that up.
Yeah, ultimately that's where I was going, is that understand the difference between generative AI and AI tools. Because AI tools can help you enhance what you're making, especially if you've got something that has a background, a world that is not easily created, especially if you don't have a ton of money, then tools can be very helpful in creating and enhancing the world, as opposed to something asking it to generate and create, because then it can only pull from what it already knows. And it's learning and learning and learning, but it's not going to work the same way. And ultimately, I always say, you'll get something from AI, but you're not going to get momentum. You're not going to get Inception. You're going to get something that is good. Well, you might get Inception now because it's not. It'll be pre-conception. But it cannot be, it's never going to really be the first of anything. It'll be 1.2 of something. So there's a difference. Tools can enhance the process. Generative, you have to be a little more careful. There's copyright, there's IP, there's people's work, and it's still not shaken out on how that's going to work in a monetization area. So you have to be extremely careful.
Yeah, and the other thing too, just me realizing coming here, like the creative community and the people who love film and want to make film, I don't think that will go away. I think that's our sort of generational human nature. And so while there are all these great tools, I think there's certainly a cost element that you try to do it as cost effective as possible. But I don't think it'll replace that creativity and that, why we're all here.
Many crystal balls. I love it. So as we kind of wrap up, I'm gonna go back quickly to all the panelists in a wrap up and ask them a quick bit of advice that they would give to filmmakers around the subject of greenlighting films. But I do want to encourage everybody to stick around. There's a reception afterwards that is sponsored by Film in Minnesota. Sarah's here somewhere. So stick around and join us for a cocktail or two. And also, if some of these topics that we were starting to dig into, AI, finance plans, DEX, distribution, there's something that are kind of new to you or you don't understand, just keep in mind that at stage 32 on the education side of things, there are webinars, classes that dig into this, so don't ever let yourself feeling intimidated by this information stop you. That's what stage 32 and all of these individuals are here for. So as we wrap up, let's start with Jackie. Final words of advice to our filmmakers.
I think it's know what you don't know and don't be embarrassed about what you don't know. I mean, I see first-time filmmakers, that call me all the time, and I think the ones that are asking the right questions, being thorough about their questions, set themselves up for way more success than the ones that want to pretend like they know something and are just going to do it on their own and then do it wrong and then have to clean it up or fix it. So making sure that you have an understanding of things and a real understanding of things from the outset is very important.
And you're already started. You're doing the right things by coming to a festival like this, going to panels, being a member of Stage 32 and speaking with people there. It's an invaluable resource to be able to learn and get in contact with people who may have more experience and knowledge to share. And like Jackie said, don't just network and don't be shy about reaching out and asking people, to help educate you on what you don't know. If as long as I have an extra minute to do it, I'll always respond to someone who reaches out and genuinely asks me something. Be aware that as you're getting information, you're also building relationships. So instead of just emailing questions and hoping for a one-directional feedback, offer to take someone out to lunch or buy them coffee, or spend some time with them on a human level as well, and give back a little bit, and come with questions and be appreciative there. That goes a long way because it still is an interpersonal business, and then maybe you can build a project or do some business with that person who may have more experience in relationships. But humility is key. Working hard, being passionate, asking questions, and not being shy about what you don't know, and just being humble in that sense, and continue to push.
I have two quick ones. One is everybody always wants to look up. I want to be that head of that company, that person who are already doing something. And the truth of the matter is you should always be looking left and right. You already know the people in your community who are talented and good, and those are the people who your relationships really are going to be the strongest. And a rising tide raises all ships, so know who's around you. And the second thing is keep in mind, for when you're talking about actors, at any given time, 96 to 98% of them are unemployed. So if you have a product and you have a good project, they will come. You just have to be able to put it out there and make sure it's ready. Make sure it is as tight as it's ever going to be. And actors are not hard to find, but they're hard to engage, and that has to do a lot with the project.
And I think for me, it's seeing a lot of producers who have the creativity and have the idea, but maybe not have the wherewithal of doing the business side of things. And so if you're that person and it's not as comfortable for you, finding someone that can help you. No one can sell your idea like you can, but you may not be able to address the language and deal with some of the more financial stuff, or even know some of the more financial stuff. So rely upon friends that have that skill set. Look to resources available to you, like SAGIndie. There are many opportunities to help complete that whole package so that you can go forward. So I think that's a really interesting thing we see across all sorts of businesses. And then the other thing to say, just sort of half-hearted but half true, I might get in trouble for this, but the Writers Guild, I would say, if you're a writer or you're looking to engage writing talent, the Writers Guild has been a difficult union to deal with lately, and they're creating a lot of challenges and signing companies up. So if you're looking to be a signatory and work with them, and then a lot of other issues with respect to their rules. They have one of the most sophisticated set of rules in television production, especially with staffing and film production as well. There are payments, so understanding those rules, working with them, but having someone that has the knowledge, but half-heartedly saying, sort of avoid that if you can, avoid working with directors. I'm already a target on their wall, so it's okay. But I do think knowing that stuff is a key to having a lot of success and avoiding a lot of trouble down the road.
We always promise to tell it how it is here at Stage 32, so thank you all.
I just want to know, I'm just sitting next to Film Writers Guild. I'm so cool.
Thanks.
And with that, let's give a big round of applause for our fantastic panelists here.